Welcome back to Glasp Talk. Today we have an amazing speaker, Andrea Saez, and she is a product marketing and management professional with over a decade of experience. And she is currently a senior product marketing manager at Unmind, a company creating a world where mental health is universally understood, nurtured, and celebrated. And also she is the co-author of best-selling book in application development in Amazon, The Product Momentum Gap. And also she has helped numerous companies achieve growth through her expertise in product thinking and scaling strategies. So today we would like to ask her about all, all about like product management and marketing, her career, and so on. Andrea, thank you for joining today.
Hey, both. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
Thank you. So first of all, could you introduce, I introduced you a little bit, but could you introduce yourself a bit to the audience and who don't know you yet?
Sure. I mean, I think you kind of did a really good job.
Thank you.
So as you said, I am Senior Product Marketing Manager at Unmind. I'm also co-author of the book, The Product Momentum Gap. And I've been working in product management and product marketing for a while now, well over a decade. I primarily worked with startups, but also scale-ups and like Series D and above type companies. So definitely quite a diverse exposure to all the levels that startups go through, as they grow, as they expand their market shares, they get more customers. So it's definitely been really interesting to see all the different stages.
Oh, yeah, really, really beautiful and really interesting career. But seems like from your LinkedIn profile, seems like your career started as a web content manager or technical support specialist. Then you move on to like product manager and product marketing manager and so on. And so could
Yes,
you
I
tell us?
I
Yeah.
tried a lot of different things.
Mhm. Sure.
I tried a lot of different things, and I I think that's okay. And that's also kind of like the biggest lesson in management and product marketing, really, is keep trying, keep learning, and until you figure things out, which is what I did. So I tried a lot of things. I started in web content management. Before that, I worked at an ice cream store. So I
Oh,
literally
really?
tried
Huh?
everything, everything. I used to work at Apple. I used to fix computers. Then I went into support, then I went into product management, and then I, by accident fell into product marketing. So try things until, you get good at something, basically.
Interesting. And how has your career changed? I mean, you said, I think product manager, product marketing manager needs like a various like a field of experience, and that comes to consolidate to the career or experience, right? Eventually. But how has your career developed over time? And what was a turning point, if you remember?
Um, I honestly, I wish I had a really smart answer, but it all happened by accident, just because the nature of working at startups is a lot of just picking up the things that others cannot pick up, if that makes any sense. So I might have been working in support, but I was always writing articles, right? And naturally, those articles then turned into blog posts. And that's how I kind of started getting exposed into the marketing world a little bit. Um, I was also the first hire at one of the startups that I worked at. So naturally, being the first one there, you kind of learn to do a lot of different things. I've done sales, I've done, not very good coding. I've done design, I've done like a lot of different things because that's kind of just what you do at startups. So you get to wear a lot of different hats, you get to do a lot of very different things. Um, and you might not be good at all those things, but that's how you learn, right?
Yes, as a startup, yeah, we should wear a hat, so many various hat and all the time, and yeah, that makes sense. But at the same time, as company grows, your roles and responsibility will change, and maybe will narrow down a little bit, and also that does that happen? Did that happen like naturally?
Yeah, I think that's how I got to product marketing, actually. So as the companies that I was with grew, I started finding kind of a very specific niche where At the time, we didn't know it was called product marketing, but it was a very interesting role between product and marketing, where I worked very closely with the product team, but I wasn't full into product. And I also worked very closely with the marketing team, but I wasn't fully marketing. And I think we called it a lot of very weird things at the time. And then eventually somebody approached me and said, "Hey, would you like to be a product marketer?" And I was like, "Oh, what is that?" And they kind of ran me through everything. And I was like, "Oh, those are all the things that I do now. I just didn't know that that's what it was called."
I see. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
sense, so yeah, you didn't know the word of product marketing. So how did you learn that role and what kind of does in jobs it does? Where the learning
Yeah.
resource? Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't know until it was the CEO of Air Focus that approached me and said, "Hey, I would love for you to come join us as a product marketing manager." And I was like, "I don't know what that is." And he's like, "No, it's all the things that you've been doing." And then I started doing a little bit of research, and I was like, "Oh, these are all the things that I have been doing." So I had been doing the job for about 5 years at that point without knowing that that was the job that I was doing. So if anything, I think it was enlightening. And it was really great to kind of find a name for it and find a group of people that were doing the same thing. Because I always felt like I didn't really have a role or a job, just because, I mean, I had a job, but I didn't really know what the role was called. And I was like the generalist, right? I was just kind of doing a little bit of everything. And then I realized that it's actually a really strategic role. It's super, super strategic. It's very close to product. It's building a bridge with the rest of the organization. It's a lot about communicating and articulating that value. And it touched on a lot of the strengths that um, I have, which is, writing and communicating, and there's a lot of creativity and strategy involved. And the more I got into it, the more I really started appreciating it.
I see. Yeah. And in terms of like a product marketing manager's job or team orchestration, and do you or have you seen any like a common mistakes happens, or a gap between like a product team, marketing team, or designers, developers? And do you have some thoughts or around?
Yeah, I think that in itself, the product marketing role is still very misunderstood. So a lot of people see it as purely a marketing role, which is incorrect because it's not. Other people see it as a sales enablement role, which again, it's not. It has elements of that for sure, uh, but it is a very strategic role. So I think any product team, design team that is either looking to bring in a new PMM or already has a PMM in there and they're feeling like, we're not working well together. My advice would be bring in that PMM into the conversation from the very beginning and close that gap. Because that's, I think, where the majority of the issues happen, is the product marketer not being exposed to all the strategic stuff they should be exposed to and work with the product team closely with.
I see. So, but when you say from early stage means, but if it's a like a 2 people startup, 3 people startup, and there's no like a PMM, right? And in what stage do you think that makes sense to have PMM as a role? Is that from 5,
That's a great
10?
question. I would say when the product manager can no longer do it on its own. So unpopular or popular opinion, I don't know how people are going to take this, but in early stage startups, when you're 3 to 5 people, the product manager is able to take care of a lot of the responsibilities that a product marketer would do. So knowing how to articulate that value, right? How do you talk about what you do in the right way? Doing a lot of the market research, doing a lot of the user research, doing a lot of the kind of high level go-to-market activities like writing release notes and writing a quick blog post about a feature. Like as a product manager, you should be able to do a lot of those things. And I know, Kay, I see like your posts all the time, like that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Creating those videos, showing people what the features are, like that is a product marketer role in a smaller startup. But when you're growing, inevitably one person taking care of all of that, it's a lot, right? It's a lot. It's a lot of work, right? You can't be thinking about that strategy and thinking about the content and thinking about product campaigns and thinking about like, how are you going to talk to people? How are you going to educate your entire sales team and your marketing team to know how to talk about the product and the features and all of that and the value that you're bringing while also building the product, right? It's a lot of work. So right now I work with 5 product managers and a VP of product and a whole marketing and sales team. And we have 2 PMMs in my team. So I manage another PMM. And even then it feels like we don't have enough people, right? Because we need more people to help out a little bit more. So I would say a good time to hire a product marketer is perhaps once you've passed or you have Series A and your team is growing, it's scaling, and like I said, the product manager just cannot do everything on their own. That is the right time to bring in someone else to help.
Agree. Right, yeah.
So, yeah, but so just curious, at your company, so how many people are working? So including
current one?
engineers? Yeah, yes,
I think we're 150 now.
150.
Then 2 PMM.
And 2 PMMs, yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Just great.
Yeah, also related to product management, also team orchestration. So in that in the big team, so there are a lot of like feature requests from sales team, like marketing team, but also so engineer team want to build this feature, or like a product managers so need to like orchestrate of everything. So in that situation, so how do you decide which feature you build next?
Oh man, that I think is the one problem that every product manager in the world has.
Yeah, we know it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it matters like the size of your team. Like you're always going to have the problem, right? How do you decide? So the first thing we do is we definitely focus on our OKRs and what our OKRs are. So obviously we have a North Star, and then each team has their product level OKRs or marketing OKRs, whatever it is. And then as feedback starts coming in, obviously we need to make the decision of, what is the common theme within this feedback? Is there any? And if there is a particular idea or a problem that we identify, does it link to the OKRs that we have? If it doesn't, it gets put, we reassess it later in the next quarter. But it does all have to link back to our business OKRs and how we're trying to impact them at the end of the day.
Yeah. So sorry, can I ask one more? So
Yeah.
You can estimate or expect so this feature will increase this KPI or OKR, but in advance, right? So the estimation is always not like right. So yeah, we expect so this feature will increase the OKR or KPI, so increase sign up, something like that. But so yeah, later on we notice this is not like matching or like linking to the OKR. So do you have any tips on like estimating so this feature or this service will increase OKR? So how do you decide?
Yeah, to be honest, there's no tips. Sometimes you just have to do the research and see what happens. A really great example is there was this one feature that we thought we really needed to focus on I think it was last quarter. And so the team went off, they did some research, they built some wireframes and everything. And we were really, really sure that it was going to be great. And then we did some user research and analysis, and it turned out it was the wrong feature. Or we were trying to solve the wrong problem. So I think my biggest tip would be, do the research. And that is the time when you can afford to be wrong, right? Before you build the whole feature and then put it out into the world and then realize, oh, we just spent 6 months building this thing and nobody wants it. So it's actually really great to see that the team had taken the time to, gather that initial feedback. They built a version, a wireframe of what the solution might look like, and very quickly they realized this is not the right thing. So if you can be wrong early, that's the time to be wrong.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And also, if if the developers can build in like 3 hours, 4 hours, then we can build it and test it, right? Depending on the team size. If the team is team of 3, 4, we couldn't afford some time, money to research. So just build it, ship it, then see how it goes. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Low code or no code or wireframe or a Figma something, the whatever takes the least amount of time that you can learn something from. You're 100% right. Like do that before you build something for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then gather the feedback and take that feedback in and learn from it and then iterate and build something better.
And then do you have the opposite example? Like, that example is like you expect something works and it didn't, realize it didn't. But do you have, expected, we don't know if this works, but sometimes it really works, right? This also happened. Do you have that experience in your career?
Yeah, I remember a really long time ago, we had some sort of like, I don't want to call it a voting mechanism, but it was more of like a feedback mechanism, where people could give a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a neutral, and then write their feedback about a particular idea. And it was like an internal team thing. And one thing we hadn't realized is that the buttons weren't accessible, in that they were red and green. And so obviously for someone that's colorblind, they can't tell the difference. And they also had no hover text whatsoever. And somebody sent in some feedback and said, hey, listen, I'm colorblind and I can't actually tell the difference, like if what the colors are meant to be, and there's no text on hover. And I was like, oh, that's a really simple thing we can change. So we changed it. It took us, what, 3-4 hours to change it. We put that change out and we had so much unexpected feedback from people saying like, thank you, like, thank you so much. And that, quickly changed the engagement with this particular feature, just because people now were able to tell what it was, how it worked, how to use it a little bit better. So sometimes it's like the really quick wins that can have really, really big impact. So I mean, I always encourage even the marketing team, the product marketing team, to just go, listen, if there's something you can do quickly that is going to have a really big impact, go for it. Like, don't wait for me to tell you it's okay to do, right? If you have the time and you have the space, do it. Like, help someone, right? Because you never know how that tiny little change might actually end up affecting a lot of people.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And also, sorry, for one more question. And because nowadays, people are obsessed with using AI, right? AI is like eating the world now. So how has your workflow or PM job, PMM job, has changed because of AI? Do your team or company use any AI tools, or how you leverage AI? Do you have some
Yeah.
example?
Yeah, I mean, we do use AI quite a lot. We've also built an AI, which is really helpful. So I'll talk about the two different aspects. So in terms of using it every day, I think it's definitely enabled some of the team members that perhaps wouldn't have the time to write blog posts to be able to do that a lot faster. So I've worked with engineers, for example, that really want to share their work, but they don't feel comfortable writing. Then they'll lean on AI, and be able to spit out a blog post. And it's been growing their confidence as well, right? And they feel more comfortable as well. And now they get in there and they edit the AI work, whereas before they would just hand it to me and be like, oh, here, it's ready. And then I would have to edit it. Now they edit it themselves because they're growing in their own confidence and finding their voice. So in that sense, I think AI is really powerful to encourage people that perhaps wouldn't feel as comfortable writing about their knowledge or their experience, and developing those writing skills and those communication skills, which is really important. On the other end, there is the fact that we are building with AI. So we've actually built this AI coach for mental health and well-being. So you can get in there and you can say, for example, I have a team member that is neurodiverse. I don't know how to support them. And the AI coach will give you a few tips. It'll also point you to some resources that we have within the product. And then on top of that, you can actually ask it to then, give you the information in another language if you need to pass that on to a team member in another office. So I can say, hey, great, give me that information in Japanese so I can forward it to Kay, for example. And it'll do that for you right away. So it speaks like over 50 languages and it's super smart. And the prompt itself has been built by our clinical psychologists as well. So it kind of makes sure that the AI has some parameters and is within a set of bounds where hopefully it won't be hallucinating either. And we also make sure that it doesn't give clinical advice because we also need to make sure that's, correct. So what it does is it reroutes people if they're having a mental health crisis, and it gives them a helpline that they can call, and it reroutes them to resources. So it's super smart, and I've used it before, right? And I've asked for help, and I've said, hey, I don't know how to deal with a situation. What would you do? And it kind of gives you like step by step kind of bullet points, like you might want to try this, you can try and ask these questions, and it points me to resources. And so in that sense, I think it's been really great to kind of have this like coach, really, right? That's there to kind of guide you through some of those tricky situations at work.
I see. Yeah, really interesting. Did it increase the KPI? I mean, AI tutor sounds really interesting. I personally really interested, but has it impacted the company or product team's KPI? Like people started using. I think in case of AI, as a PM or PMM, we should how to say let users adapt the new technology, right? New user flow, new user experience, and over the course of I think 1 year, 2 years, last 2 years, have you seen the people's behavior change, adoption change, and have you seen this?
Yeah, I think definitely people are adopting AI a lot more, and they feel more comfortable with it. But there's still, I think, a group of people that don't trust it and they're very skeptical about it. So there's like two very polarizing ends, right? People that trust it and people that don't trust it at all. And I think both ends are wrong because if you don't trust it, you're going to get left behind, right? Because AI is developing very, very quickly. Like you have to get on board with it. You have to learn how to use it. You have to know, how it works, how to exploit it to your own benefit, really. And then there's the people that trust it too much, to the point where they won't realize or won't question some of the answers that it says. And I'm just speaking about AI in general, right? Not about what we built, but as you probably know, sometimes AI tends to hallucinate and tends to say things that are not true, but it says it with such confidence that if you don't take the time to kind of stop and question it, you might end up, writing about the wrong thing or believing the wrong thing or extending information that is incorrect. So there has to be a bit of a middle ground there where, yes, you adopt it and you engage with it, but you also have to kind of use your own common sense and go, wait a minute, maybe that answer isn't right, and take a little bit of time to research or understand, where the bounds are of that hallucination.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yes. Back to the AI question. Sorry, but the tools, and product you use, and do you or you personally or your team company use any tools like not only AI but like a team workflow collaboration tools like a Notion, Figma, Adobe, some tools, and then we'd like to know like how you use tools around workflow and note taking, knowledge management.
We use Notion a lot. We're definitely a Notion company. We also use Figma. We're fully on Figma and FigJam. And in terms of like our AI coach, it's GPT based. Personally, I use GPT, Gemini, and Claude. So I will use all three, sometimes just to double check things and see if it can come up with different words or ideas. So I'll prompt it something and then I'll copy the same prompt into Gemini and Claude just to see if, it can come up with another variation of that. And I also just find the technology fascinating. So sometimes I'll just compare the quality just for fun. But that's just me.
Have you seen difference when you use the same prompt?
Yes, definitely. I think Gemini is really good at like really short, concise answers. So for example, if you're looking to create a landing page and you tell it very specific information, like this is my ICP, this is, the information that I want to convey. It's really good at coming up with like catchy ideas, if that makes any sense, like short, snappy, markety type things, at least as a baseline, right? I don't think it's very good with long form content, whereas GPT is better with long form content. I don't think it's very good at coming up with like markety stuff. And Claude, personally, I haven't had a lot of success with. It's not any better than either of the other two tools. I keep wanting to give it a chance, but it's kind of fallen flat for me. So I often will go between Gemini and GPT. So an example of this is we had a new feature that we were building and we needed to come up with a name. And obviously we had a workshop, a naming session, but just to kind of kick off the ideas, I put in some of the information into Gemini, and then I copy pasted the results into our FigJam board. And then I said, okay, well, these are the ideas that GPT has come up with. These are the ideas that Gemini has come up with. I'm like, what can we come up with that's different or similar, or, like use that as a baseline to then continue with our own ideation session. And we've done it a few times, and it's been definitely helpful to, like I said, kind of kick off the ideation session.
Interesting. Like, yeah, AI in ideation phase. And you said in also blogging before, and blogging, translation, and so AI tutor, and also ideation. That's really unique use case, I think. Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah, changing the topic. So yeah, I know you are writing a lot of like web articles and publishing a lot of web articles. So that's why I found it so on the internet. And so you are publishing a new book, right? So what made you so decide and get the opportunity to write a book about product management?
Like many things in my life, it was an accident.
Okay.
So what happened was I was working very closely with Dave Martin, who's my co-author. And we had been writing a series of blog posts for about 3 or 4 months at that point. And me being a product marketer, I kind of looked at it and I said, hey, there's a bit of a common thread, a common topic among all these blog posts that we're writing. And I said, I think we might actually have material for a book. And he very quickly agreed with me. And he said, great, let's do it. I wasn't expecting him to say yes, but he did. But because we're both product managers, we thought before we commit to the book, let's write a white paper first and let's test that. Let's test the idea. So we wrote a white paper called Product Market Fit is Dead, which was a very catchy title. And we put it on Product Hunt when they were still accepting books and white papers. So we put it out there and it had a really good response. I still have people, write to me, say, hey, I saw your white paper. It was so good. And so once we got that feedback, then we thought, okay, now we can write the book. So that testing iteration phase that we did was really good for us to test interest in the market.
How long was the article, by the way? Was it a 2-page or 10-page? It's like you were testing like a prototype, right? precise
Yeah,
way
exactly.
to say,
Exactly.
yeah.
We were testing a prototype for the book. I think the white paper is about 7 pages, give or take, 7 pages. It's still on Product Hunt if you look it up.
Oh,
You can probably
yeah.
still download it. So it's definitely there. But yeah, like you said, it was a prototype to see if the ideas that we were talking about to people. And it turns out that it was a great idea to do it. So that's when we then went ahead with the book.
Then you moved on to writing a real book, right? Maybe
Yeah.
section by section and so on. Cool.
Yes, the book writing itself took about 10 months, give or take. Yeah, 12 months, yeah.
And
Did
could you
you-
tell us a detail of the book?
Of the book, yeah, of course. The book is called The Product Momentum Gap. And basically what it focuses on is organizational alignment. So ensuring that there's organizational alignment from the very top, starting with the C-levels, all the way down to like marketing, support, sales, everything that's customer facing. And the idea here really is having alignment around what the key user behaviors are that your strategy is going to focus around in order to then influence that business growth and then be able to then communicate value in that way. So what that means is, let's say that, everyone's aligned, this is great, but now you need to decide what are you aligned around, right? So are you, like we were talking about OKRs earlier, what are your OKRs? Are you actually aligned around your OKRs? And once you have those OKRs, you then need to decide what are the key things that you're going to influence your user to do. We call that user behaviors. So inevitably, and this is really important, I think, any product that you build, like Glasp, for example, you're influencing a certain behavior, right? And that behavior is either going to change something that already exists, or you're creating an entirely new behavior for people, right? And if you do that, you need to then think about how am I going to not just change or create that behavior, but how am I going to communicate that this behavior is actually valuable, right? So how do you get people to go, oh, not only is highlighting all this stuff great, but what is the value for me? Right? So you're influencing the behavior and then you're communicating the value of that behavior. And if your team is not aligned around those two, that's when you start experiencing the product momentum gap, which is your team is building something, but your marketing team is talking about a completely different thing. Or your team is building something, but your customers are not adopting it because they don't understand it, right? They're not using those features. So that's what we see in a lot of scale ups, right? At first, everything goes great, and then you start building, and you're building this way, but your customer base is going this way, right? So there's this big gap between what product is doing and what your customers or even marketing is trying to do. So closing that gap involves having that alignment between user behaviors, starting with the C-level all the way to marketing. So if your marketing team is able to talk about those same behaviors that you're building, then your customers are going to have a really, really great experience where they understand what you're doing, why it's good for them, and then they're actually going to use it and go, hey, this is great. This is beneficial for me. And then if you're really lucky, they're going to encourage other people to go do the same thing. And that's when you have scalability. And that's when products go viral, when people go, hey, I've heard about this really great product. It helps me do this, right? You should use it too. That's virality, and that's what you want.
Wow, really, thank you for the great advice. And then actually we were smiling because we really resonated with what you mentioned. Like, yeah, I think we've seen, in so many startups too, but, building something, but, it doesn't align with customers, voice or, marketing team doesn't align. And so, yeah, common mistakes. And yeah, I see.
Yeah, and it happens to everybody. Teams grow really fast and you don't have the time to communicate, which is why the book, like I said at the beginning, it's really about organizational alignment. And we have a bunch of templates in there that can help you have those meetings and have those workshops where you really, really align around, what are those user behaviors? How do you know they're the right behaviors? How do you measure those behaviors? And then how do you communicate them? How do you communicate them to your marketing team, to your sales team, to your customers so that they understand the value? And that's where product management and product marketing should be working very, very closely together.
So yeah, we should buy a book and read a book and write a like those documents in our team. Those will be a very small things right now. Yeah, thanks for the advice. And so yeah, you started with publishing web articles online, and so now turning book author in physical book. So how was your career and past experience helped you like the book or like publish an article online?
That's really interesting. I almost want to say it doesn't feel like it was a huge step to go from one to the other, just because I've always been writing. But writing a book is very different than writing an article. I can tell you that. Writing an article, I think the kind of easy part about it is that if you're wrong, you can either delete it or you can update it. But with a book, if you're wrong, you can't do that. And a really funny example of that, and I will show you, is this happened only after we published the book. It was self-published. We have a very bad spelling mistake right there. I don't know if you can see it.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it
audience,
title?
audience is spelled incorrectly. And I didn't notice until after the book was published. Luckily, it is self-published, so you can go back to Amazon and update it, and it'll update all the copies. But this is what I mean is if you make a mistake on your book, it's very difficult to correct. So now I have this printed copy that has a spelling mistake or two, and I can't do anything about it. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The second thing is I think I was a lot more emotional in the process of writing the book, because it's like building a product. Writing a book is like building a product, right? And there's a lot of iterations that it goes through. So obviously we got feedback from a few key product leaders that read it, and they gave us a ton of feedback. And sometimes that feedback can be really harsh, not because they meant it to be harsh, but because you're so dedicated to building this thing that then you get feedback and you're like, oh my God, I now have to correct this whole thing that I have put months and months and months of work into, which is what building a product feels like, right? It's like, oh my God, I built this thing and now people aren't responding to it the way that I thought they would. So that for me was, I think, the hardest thing of going from writing a blog and that experience from writing blogs to writing a book, was having to receive that feedback and go, oh my God, I'm so wrong about this. Now I have to start over. And actually about 3 weeks before we published the book, we completely tore it apart, like completely tore it apart and then put it back together. So it was 10 months of work to rip the whole thing apart and then reshuffle it and then string it back together. But I'm very glad that that happened, because we now then have this really great version of the book that's out there. But it was a process. It was a lot of tears involved.
And how did you spend the 10 months? Like 3 months for planning, or 3 months, or how does it look like? I have no idea what's the writing process like. Yeah.
That's a great question. So I think the first 4 months, it was very much like Miro sessions of, what do we want to talk about? What does the structure kind of look like? And then we would write a little bit and then come together and read it and revise it and then go, do we like it? Do we not like it? And then we kind of went from there. The next, I want to say 6 months, was very much writing very intensely, then taking a break, then writing very intensely, then taking a break. In part because obviously I had a full-time job, so I could only do so much. But I think like with any product, sometimes you need to take a step back from the problem a little bit, and kind of go, let's refresh our heads or minds, take a little bit of a break, and then come back to the problem, and then, try to figure it out again. Then we went through about a month of feedback. So I think we started gathering feedback around June or July of last year. And then, yeah, so it was
from whom?
Product leaders. So we sent it to a few friends to just kind of give us a little bit of feedback. We also consulted with an editor as well. And then in August, we ripped the whole thing apart, like completely ripped it apart. And then we had to put it back together based on the feedback that we had received. And then it went live in September.
Wow.
So it was about 10 months of writing, 1 month of feedback, and then ripped it apart and then put it back together. I would do things differently next time if I were to write another book, just in terms of like perhaps getting feedback a little bit earlier instead of waiting for the whole thing to be done. But I guess much like building a product, right? But with a book, you also kind of need to show the whole narrative together. So I don't know. Like I said, it was definitely a very interesting experience. But there's a few things that I think I might change for the future.
Interesting. And then I think this is a kind of forever question to writers, but what was the final moment you or your co-author decided, oh, okay, let's go with this, what was the, because whole part separating, deconstruct again, and so on. So at what point you realize, or your co-author realize, okay, let's go with this?
You know what? After we got the feedback and we ripped it apart, I actually had to take about a week and a half off, just because the psychological and mental stress that I had gone through of like having to rip it apart was too much for me. And I'm really, really lucky that I had Dave as a co-author, as a writing partner, as a friend, just there, because I had spent so much time and so much energy like constructing a certain narrative. And when it changed, to me, it was very emotional and it was very exhausting. So Dave then said, listen, take a week, take some time off. And he took the book and he rearranged it. And then he sent it back to me after, I think it was a week or a week and a half. And then he said, let me know what you think. And I saw the new structure and I was like, oh my God, it's so much better. And I trusted him with that process. So then when I got it back, I was able to fill in the gaps that were missing. So it was really great to have someone there to like support me, but also look at the puzzle in a way that I wasn't able to, because I had been looking at it from a very, very specific angle. And then he took it and he said, trust me, trust me on this one. And he rearranged the whole thing and he said, okay, now you can finish it. And that was a really great part of the process. And that's when we said, okay, now we got it, right? Now we can finish the narrative. Now we can, dot all our I's and everything. But I don't think I could have done it if I didn't have someone there like him to help me. And we leaned on each other and throughout the whole process. It was really great, like I said, to have someone that can work with you alongside you to look at things from a different perspective. So that was a lot of fun.
Meeting seems like we need a great co-founder when we build product, a book, either way.
Yeah, but also someone that thinks differently than you. Because obviously I had my own thoughts, but he had his own thoughts. And then having that back and forth throughout the 10 months, to be fair, it wasn't just at the end, but throughout the 10 months to bring in a different balance and a different experience and a different set of ideas, and someone that is going to be there to like when you reach that point of like hitting a wall and being like, I cannot tell the difference anymore, having that person that thinks completely different from you that can take it and go, okay, trust me, let me try something, that was absolutely invaluable for sure.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you. So, our audience are like aspiring product manager, product marketing manager, or sometimes like they're aspiring writers. And through your experience, career, and do you have any advice to those people who are seeking to that path, like you?
Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be patient. I found out what I love to do by trying a lot of different things and being patient with myself and saying, let's try something new. Let's try something different. I don't think you're ever too late to figure out, how to approach your career, and to try and pivot new things. I never saw myself as a writer or an author, or a product marketer. And here I am being an author and a product marketer, right? So I think the best piece of advice would be, yeah, be kind to yourself and don't be afraid to try new things, because you never know when trying something new might actually lead you to a whole new other path in your career that you never would have imagined.
Sorry, makes sense. And be open-minded too, I think. Yeah, that
And be
totally
open-minded. Yeah, absolutely. Be open-minded.
totally makes sense. And yeah, then before ending our talk, since Grasp is like a platform where we people accumulate digital legacy for others and hope it helps others. And do you have any thoughts on like, what kind of legacy or impact do you want to leave behind for the future generations or other people?
That's a really big question. That's a really, really big, important question. I think if there's anything, I mean, legacy is a big word, so I don't know if this is a legacy, but I would really like for people building products or writing books or selling products, right, to always keep empathy in mind. I think that, speaking of like valuable lessons, I think empathy and knowing how to practice empathy is something that we don't talk a lot about, especially in product, when we should be. And empathy, like practicing empathy for others, practicing empathy for yourself, knowing when to take a break, knowing when to step back from something, knowing when to take a risk with something, and just being very empathetic and open-minded and saying, I could be wrong about this, but it's okay. Like, it's okay if I'm wrong, right? And that being wrong is part of that process. I wish people were more open with that idea that being wrong is something to be celebrated, because if you're never wrong, what are you learning? Right? You're not learning if you're wrong. Or you're not learning if you're always right, rather, is what I meant to say. But when you're wrong, you have that opportunity to go, okay, well, why did it go wrong? How can I avoid it? What did I learn from the mistake? And all of that requires a lot of empathy. So yeah, I think that would be my thing.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. And it's all about process and learning process and so much empathy. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And yeah, thank you for joining today at Glasp Talk. And we really enjoyed it, and we learned a lot from the conversation today with you.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you for inviting me.